What I'm going to talk to you about today is something that took me a good 15 years to learn. And if somebody just would have told me up front, it might have taken one. So if it winds up being something you're going to use, hopefully the value will be that it was delivered in a way that you could walk away with and keep and immediately use and build upon and turn into something quickly. But first and foremost, let me congratulate you.
Thank you.
For, I don't know why, you haven't won Publishers Clearinghouse. This is, congratulations for understanding, and I bet you do, the value of public speaking. Not everybody, younger people might think, oh, public speaking, that just sounds like it's hard, or older people might think, oh, that's just scary, I don't even want to do it. It's very valuable. Imagine the circumstances when being able to communicate your thoughts powerfully. Imagine all the circumstances where that can help. Everyone thinks of a job interview or a public speech. If you ever, not that many people wind up giving public speeches though. What about giving a presentation at work? What about just explaining yourself to your supervisor or the people you supervise? Or what about in a conversation with your spouse or your children? People don't think of that as public speaking, but it is getting your thoughts together and getting them into the mind of another person. And it can be done well, and it can be done very poorly. And a lot of people never get good at it because they get stopped by the panic and the fear of the thought of getting up in front of a large audience or even a medium audience, and that's just terrifying. But it's definitely important. If you value the concept of getting your point across, or of defending yourself when someone is attacking your position, just being able to say it clearly under pressure, that's extremely valuable. So I hope that's why you're here, and I hope it helps what we're going to talk about with that. As far as me, I'm not a full-time public speaking coach. I really mostly do guitar lessons and SAT tutoring and college admissions and things like that. But I used to do this all the time. And I was the conductor of a public speaking school in my church when I was younger. And it's an interesting environment to learn it because you have a friendly audience there, but it's a big audience. So when I became the public speaking instructor, which took me 10 years of learning to get to, I found out that teaching people how to do it, the competence part, the how do you do it, what do you say, how do you prepare, how do you go about outlining it, all of these skills were about half of it. And that's being generous. Half or most of it was getting past the fear, because you could have everything right and be paralyzed with fear. And again, that's what people are afraid of, like Churchill, we're afraid of the fear itself. But it's actually more sensible than the way he put it, because we're afraid that the fear will make us do such a poor job that it will be a disaster, and if our raise depends upon it, or if getting a point across to someone important depends upon it, that's scary. That isn't, however, the real reason that we're afraid of it. We're going to get to that in just a minute. But I want to mention one other thing, which is why are we doing this here at RealBrave Audio? Because this is not a public speaking school. But if you think about it, just the name RealBrave really kind of hints at the connection. What we do teach people here is how to get from the studio, where we're practicing, where we're learning, not the recording studio, that's cool too, but the regular studio where you're learning, to the stage. That's our slogan, from the studio to the stage. And we do it with kids and adults. Both are scared. So a great part of our expertise, not just the teachers, but everybody who works here knows about this because they're musicians, is the fear of getting on a stage and performing something. It's enormous, and that's what we do. We basically teach courage in the face of that particular fear. And there's a lot of overlap between that and what I taught with public speaking. In fact, it's pretty much the same thing. So the first question we should cover, and I'm going to take out my phone so I can keep an eye on the time so that I don't go over time. And the big question is, why is it so scary? Now I just want to give you 10 seconds to think about it. I'm not going to quiz you. But just think without me talking for 10 seconds. Why is it terrifying to the point where people in their list of fears put it above death? Okay? Maybe not at the moment, but when they're making the list, it beats death, right? Why is it so terrifying? And just take 10 seconds. I'll count. Just think about it. you may notice the first 5 seconds you weren't thinking yet. You're still processing. I'm asking you as if I even told you I'm not going to test you. But just doing it under pressure, and we as teachers here know this. When we ask a student to do something, it's pressure, and we got to pull that back so that they have a chance. Very, very important. But if you thought of it, you'll recognize it in the answer. It's because of our natural history. When we back up a few thousand, and maybe a few tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, and just look at the human experience. If I were to walk out onto the field and see all of you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I should be scared for my life. Why? What does it mean when you're walking out of the field and you come across a group of people 100,000 years ago? I mean, I know we weren't there, but what does it mean if you're in the bad neighborhood at night and you come across a group of 7 people? Yeah, it could be you're about to be attacked. Well, what if it's 100 people? Now what does it look like? That's an army. And if you're alone facing an army, something should happen in your brain that turns on 2 very important chemicals, adrenaline and cortisol. And the 2 of them create some sort of response that you all know about, the fight or flight response, right? Except there are 3 responses: fight, flee, or freeze. And that's actually valuable too if the animal can't see you moving, right? T-Rex can't see you.
With a bear.
Velociraptor.
The bear. You're not supposed to move.
Don't move, right?
Right.
So we have that, and it's not just from our parents teaching, it's from millennia of parents teaching and people dying by not obeying. So we've been shaped by this fear, and it's a good thing. But what about in a public speaking situation? Well, here's 100 people. You know they're not going to attack you. You know it. They've been checked at the door. There's even metal detectors. They're not going to do it. And they might even be your friends. What if you're at your church or your job or something where people kind of like you? It's still terrifying because the genetic response is there. And here's what goes wrong. People get that response and they immediately try to control it. Oh, I can't get scared. If you control it, it's going to get worse. Because if you're not listening to that signal that's coming from right in your own brain will magnify the signal, and you know how it does it, and it happens. So if you try to control your nervousness, you can get into a downward spiral, like a tailspin of an airplane going down, where it's like, I can hear in my voice that I'm nervous. Oh, they can hear that I'm nervous. Oh, they think I don't know what I'm... And meanwhile, I'm trying to say something while all those thoughts are going on. Now that's what people are afraid of. And by the way, it's not that... It's just because they're not going to kill you doesn't make it that much better. Because socially, when you're not going to fight, but when you're going to talk, what happens if you have no credibility? What happens if they think you're hilarious? What if they think you're a joke? And that's a very important concern in humans because it means everything in all sorts of areas. So we have a built-in fear that is perfect for public speaking, which means it's perfect for stage performance, perfect in the worst possible way. It takes us right out of the game. A lot of people have overcome it. They've gotten to the point where they're very comfortable on stage. How do you do it? Well, I'm going to just glance at my notes here, make sure I'm on time. All right. You do it with 2 things: competence and confidence. Competence is being able to do it, having the skills to do it. And we make sure when we send people out onto the stage at our concert that they're ready. Because you know what can happen if you're not ready and you're performing, and even if people are clapping for you and you know it's not good enough, that can put the wrong message into your own head. So we try to make sure they're competent and eventually, if possible, confident. Right? And we're going to get to that. Those are 2 of the 3 C's of public performance and public speaking and musical performance and poetry and all of it. There are 3 C's. Start with the first one: competence. If it was to play a song, you need to know that you can do this part or whatever the instrument is, competently make the sounds. And there's a scale on this. If it's a child doing it, everybody understands that it's a miracle if they could do anything, and it's amazing, and we rightfully clap. So, and we're also teaching them not to be so afraid of an audience, so all of that is true. But once you get up to the almost adult level and you're actually thinking, especially in the adult world, when you're going to do anything public, your audience is not going to be that friendly all the time, and even if they behave in a friendly way, you might not think that they're friendly. So back to competence. It sounds like we're talking about confidence, but competence is not necessarily knowing that you're great. It's just being great. And if it's not great, it's being good. And if it's not good, it's being good enough. So let's say we're trying to play a concert and it's not a high level. If we know, I know I can play the song. It's not perfect. It's not perfect, but I'm competent enough. Then when I go out there, my brain has something that it can do. Confidence can be very confusing. So we're going to just hold on to that for a minute. Imagine if you're giving a public speech and you want to have competence. Now it's not playing, it's not a physical thing of knowing notes, it's not knowing and remembering your song. Competence has levels in public speaking too. And the first level is reading. Well, I could demonstrate it, but you can imagine if I just read something and I could read the words with a decent rhythm and it sounded right. Not necessarily Sir Laurence Olivier, but a very, normal but good job. That's a level of competence if I can read something. The next level of competence in public speaking is not reading it off the page, but having an outline and looking at the outline that doesn't give you sentences, but has all the thoughts that you need. That's not so easy though, because you could be reading and read it perfectly, but if you have an outline, you could be reading and then getting confused by what you wrote, so you have to get good at that too. But the next level, which is a little scarier, is to be reading from a very sparse outline that has these things, but you're not really going to always look at it, and you can speak extemporaneously where you're not even looking at it, but part of your mind is looking at the clock and making sure that you're not overcoming it. I'm saying this stuff out loud to demonstrate this. So those are the levels of competence, and it obviously applies in a music school, and if we're doing any kind of public speaking, let's say it's a meeting at work, we could read our points, we could have an outline and say our points, or we could just talk about our points and have a mental outline or a very sparse outline. And obviously, it's a progression. The closer you can get to the extemporaneous, the better. It also gets easier as you put down the words and the detailed outline. It actually does. One thing, though, will completely mess this up, and that is if we don't connect with our audience. Now let's say I'm reading, and I'm going to do the Gettysburg Address because it's the only thing I have in my mind right now. And Lincoln said, 70 years ago, I'm pretending to read, 70 years ago, our fathers brought forth onto this continent. I'm not looking at anybody, but if I read it, and I read it competently, and I read it with a way where I'm paying attention, you could even connect to that, very old speech and get it. If I'm looking from an outline and I'm looking at you a little bit, you could connect, and if I'm really letting go, it's easier to connect. But there's something that kills it, and that brings us to our second C, which is confidence. What if you have no confidence? Now, I thought about this a lot, because confidence is a little bit of a con in itself. Let's just think about a couple of questions, and now, I wrote these down specifically. These are very tricky things about confidence. See if any of these thoughts have come to you. On confidence, one is it knowing that you're good and knowing I'm good? Or is it knowing, well, I'm good enough? Or is it feeling like you're great? We use the word confidence for all three of those things, so it can get confusing. But don't some people have no confidence at all and are still amazing? Aren't there people who do amazing, I'm going to guitar here, but aren't there people who do amazing things and are very shy afterwards? I don't even want to talk about it, I'm not sure, I don't know if it was good, I'm really worried. In a way, competence trumps confidence, because if you're so good at what you're doing and you're completely focused on it and you're scared out of your mind, it's still great. Nobody necessarily knows just how scared you are, and they will tell you afterwards, you didn't seem nervous at all. Never hurt you. And you didn't, because you were concentrating. So, if we look at confidence, what we're going to find out is that it's not necessarily the answer. And aren't there people who have too much confidence? Let's think, there's a singer in a popular band from the 80s who couldn't sing for his life, but had incredible bravado and dancing ability and looked good for his age and was fantastically entertaining. And he pulled it off. He had all confidence and seemingly no competence. Not really true, though. He just had no competence at music. He had great competence at dancing. Yes, it's David Lee Roth. He had great competence, you know. This was my favorite band, I have to admit it. So he conned me. But let's go worse than the singer who's conning you. How about the con artist? What if it's a person who's a professional con artist? Now that person is trying to make you feel that he has competence, he or she, in whatever it is. And so now, confidence is not necessarily the great thing. How about a magician? A magician tells you up front that he's conning you, he or she. They don't pretend they have magic powers. I don't know one that does. They all say it's tricks. They admit it. Okay? And obviously the whole trick is to make you think something else happened than what happened, so they're definitely gaining your confidence about something. But find me a magician who will think that bravado or overconfidence will make up for a lack of skill. A magician? You'll see every trick coming. So confidence as an idea, I'm just going to stomp on a little bit because it's almost worthless in what we're talking about. But it's nice. It's nice to have it. So, what I want this to bring us to, and I'm checking my time, 5:01, we're going to be okay, right? Okay. I wrote on Facebook today, I don't know if you guys were coming anyway, but I tried to get a few of my friends to come down. The rain scared them away. But I wrote that I was going to talk about a single question that I found to be the most important question for any kind of performance, including being a teacher or a parent talking to your child at work, musical performance, and of course the center of this conversation, public speaking. So, what is this question? I'll just ask the question. It is, where is your mind? I've been using this phrase with children and adults for a while, and it's nothing that revolutionary. It's just something we don't tend to check when we're in that situation. Because look at what happens. Let's say I'm about to give a speech, and this is it. I'm just about to talk about something, right? If I'm panicking, where is my mind? What it means is, where is my attention? So if I'm panicking, what am I thinking about that's making me panic? Now, there's a crowd of people that might kill me. Oh, they're not going to kill me, but neurologically they're going to kill me, so I still have the feeling they're going to kill me. I feel my own fear, okay, which is my own adrenaline and cortisol as a biological response to stress, normal, but I feel it. Then I see manifestations of it. Here comes the tailspin. I notice that my voice is shaky. I notice that I'm not loud enough. I'm coughing. Everything's going wrong. My body language is starting to show. They can tell. Where's my mind? It's out there. My mind is, what do they see and what are they evaluating? Now imagine if I'm performing on a stage and I'm thinking, oh, do I look okay? Is this good? Where am I not? My mind is not in what I'm doing. It's in an evaluation of what I'm doing. Sometimes it's in an evaluation that someone else might be having. And sometimes it gets into a loop. They see that I'm seeing, that they're seeing, that I'm seeing, that they're seeing, and now I'm in a real tailspin. All right, so where is your mind is a question that can help us to get our mind back where it's supposed to be. Now, in baseball, it's really easy to see, and even if you, anyone baseball fans? Anyone like baseball? Okay, does anyone know how it works? You know how baseball works? Any cricket people? So in baseball, you've got a cylinder in your hand. It's a cylinder, which means it's curved, right? And not like a cricket racket, it's really curved, right? Radius of about 2 or 3 inches, 1.5 inches. And you're getting a ball thrown at you, which is a sphere. Now a sphere has very little surface area that's going to hit a cylinder, which means the chances of hitting it straight are incredibly small. Then you have a pitcher who's going to pitch the ball to you, and that person's job is to make sure you can't hit it. And in the rules, that person can throw it at you, too far away, too low, too high, can change speed when it looks like a fast pitch and it's not, can make the ball curve while moving in 4 different directions, and you don't know what's coming. There's also a knuckleball where that pitcher doesn't know what's going to happen. The wind will take it, a little tiny bit of wind will throw it all over the place. Now, what do you think are the odds that a very, very, very good professional athlete is going to hit that? with a professional pitcher. Well, that's what makes it a game, right? But imagine a professional baseball player. I'll name one, Lou Piniella. You may have heard of him. He was on the Yankees a long, long time ago. And he was known as a clutch hitter. In sports, that means a person who does even better when there's pressure. Derek Jeter is known for this, too. A lot of Rusty Staub from the Mets. There's a lot of great clutch hitters in history. And they're known for it because a lot of other great players tend to make mistakes when they're nervous. Where is your mind? Well, where is Lou Piniella's mind? I thought about this as a kid. I've been writing this talk since I was 7. Lou Piniella would get up there all scruffy, looked older than me at 30, and he'd get up there, it doesn't even look like he can barely stand, and 9th inning, 2 outs, runners on base, a situation that's scary, where something could happen, and everyone else's mind is on what's going to happen. Are we going to win? We could lose. What if we win? What if we lose? Consequences to winning. Well, those are big in adult Major League Baseball because it might make me move to Cincinnati where my mother-in-law is dying and I need to be there, and if I can get traded. Now, can you afford to think about this when the ball is coming? That's insane. So the players have to get their minds off of all the possible distractions, which are valid fears, valid distractions, and get their mind onto one thing.